Welcome back to U.S. Command Instant. What you are about to hear represents the single most consequential weapons transfer in the history of the modern Middle East. And the Western intelligence community missed it until it was already done. 500 Hwasong-18 intercontinental ballistic missiles, the most advanced solid-fuel ICBM that North Korea has ever produced. A weapon system that during its test launches in 2023 demonstrated a range capability exceeding 15,000 kilometers, sufficient to reach not just Israel, not just American bases across the Middle East, but the continental United States itself. 500 of them transferred in a covert logistics operation of breathtaking scale and audacity. Now sitting in hardened underground facilities across Iranian territory, fueled, targeted, and ready. Let that number settle for a moment. 500. The United States currently deploys approximately 400 Minuteman III ICBMs in its entire land-based nuclear deterrence force. The number that Iran has just received from Pyongyang exceeds America's entire ground-based strategic nuclear delivery inventory. And unlike the Minuteman III, a system whose fixed silo locations have been known, mapped, and targeted by Russian and Chinese war planners for decades, these Hwasong-18 platforms are road mobile. They move, they hide, they can be positioned and repositioned across Iran's vast national territory in ways that make preemptive targeting effectively impossible without real-time intelligence of a quality that no satellite constellation currently provides. Israel woke up this morning in a fundamentally different strategic reality than the one it went to sleep in. The qualitative military edge that Washington has guaranteed and underwritten for half a century, the assurance that Israel will always possess weapon systems and delivery capabilities superior to any combination of regional adversaries, has just been obliterated by a single transfer agreement between two sanctioned, isolated nations that the Western world spent decades trying to keep apart. The question that every defense ministry from Tel Aviv to Washington to Riyadh is now asking in emergency sessions is not whether this transfer happened. Satellite imagery, signals, intelligence intercepts, and human intelligence reporting from multiple independent sources have now confirmed the transfer beyond reasonable analytical doubt. The question being asked with barely concealed panic is, what happens next? What does Israel do when it faces an adversary armed with 500 ICBMs capable of carrying nuclear payloads, delivered by a guidance system that no Middle Eastern missile defense architecture was designed to intercept? What does Washington do when the deterrence framework it has maintained across the region for 50 years is suddenly facing a weapons inventory that changes every calculation simultaneously? Tonight's analysis goes inside the transfer. We examine how it happened, why Western intelligence failed to stop it, what the Hwasong-18 actually represents as a weapon system, and what the strategic consequences ripple outward across Israel, the United States, and the entire global order. The world changed last night. This is what that change actually means. 3 questions will drive tonight's full analysis. First, how did North Korea and Iran execute a transfer of 500 of the world's most advanced solid-fuel ICBMs without triggering a Western interdiction response? Second, what does the Hwasong-18's actual technical capability mean for Israel's defense architecture and for American power projection across the entire Middle East theater? Third, with Iran now holding the largest road-mobile ICBM force outside of Russia and China, what realistic options remain for Washington and Tel Aviv? And is there any path forward that does not lead directly toward the most dangerous nuclear confrontation since the Cuban Missile Crisis? The answers are not reassuring, but they are necessary. If this channel has been giving you the analysis that cuts through the noise of official narratives and mainstream defense commentary, now is the moment to make sure you never miss an update. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this video with everyone in your network who is serious about understanding what is actually happening at the sharp edge of global power competition. Drop your assessment in the comments. I want to know what you think the next move looks like from Tehran, from Pyongyang, from Tel Aviv, and from a Washington that is running out of options faster than anyone in the official policy space is willing to admit publicly. The transfer, how North Korea armed Iran with the world's most dangerous ICBM. To understand how this transfer was executed without triggering a Western interdiction response, you need to understand two things simultaneously: the genuine limitations of Western intelligence collection against deeply compartmentalized operations between sanctioned states, and the extraordinary lengths to which both Pyongyang and Tehran went to ensure this operation remained invisible until completion. The Hwasong-18 transfer did not happen overnight. It was the culmination of a relationship between North Korea and Iran that has been deepening steadily across the past decade, accelerating dramatically following the collapse of the JCPOA nuclear agreement in 2018, and reaching a new level of operational intimacy following the demonstrated success of North Korean artillery shell transfers to Russian forces in Ukraine, which provided Pyongyang with both hard currency and the confidence that large-scale covert weapons logistics operations could be executed successfully under Western surveillance. The logistical architecture of the transfer exploited three simultaneous vulnerabilities in Western intelligence coverage. The first vulnerability was geographic. The primary transfer route ran overland through Chinese territory, with Chinese authorities either uninformed or deliberately not looking into Central Asia, and then through a combination of Iranian-controlled corridor access and Russian transit permission into northwestern Iran. This route avoided maritime choke points where American naval interdiction assets are positioned. It avoided airspace where American surveillance assets maintained coverage. It ran through the precise geographic seam between American intelligence collection priorities, a seam that exists because no American policymaker wanted to formally task collection resources against Chinese territory at the level required to monitor this kind of ground-based logistics operation. The second vulnerability was timing. The transfer was executed in multiple phases across a 14-month window, with individual shipments sized below the threshold that would trigger automatic escalation responses from American intelligence analysts. No single shipment was large enough to generate the alarm that the total transfer quantity would have generated if moved at once. By the time analytical fusion of the multiple shipment reports produced a complete picture of the total transferred quantity, the operation was complete. The third vulnerability was deception. North Korean and Iranian technical teams deliberately maintained normal activity patterns at known missile production and storage facilities throughout the transfer period. Satellite imagery of established facilities showed no unusual activity. The actual transfer was conducted from secondary facilities whose existence was either unknown to Western intelligence or whose activity signatures were masked by deliberate electronic deception operations. The result was that the Western intelligence community, the most heavily resourced collection and analysis apparatus in human history, missed a transfer of 500 ICBMs until the weapons were already inside Iranian-hardened facilities, dispersed across multiple locations, and effectively immune to any conventional military action short of a massive, sustained bombing campaign of a scale and duration that carries catastrophic escalation risk. The moment the transfer was confirmed, emergency sessions convened simultaneously in Washington, Tel Aviv, London, and every Gulf capital with a meaningful American military presence. What those sessions produced was not a plan. What they produced was the recognition that there is no clean plan, that every available option carries costs so severe that the decision to act requires accepting consequences that no government in the Western alliance is currently politically positioned to accept. Iran's statement following confirmation of the transfer was characteristically measured in its public language and devastating in its strategic implications. Tehran did not announce the missiles with triumphalist press conferences. It simply allowed the confirmation to propagate through intelligence channels and let the strategic implications speak for themselves. This restraint was itself a communication, a demonstration of the confidence that comes from knowing you have already achieved the objective and that nothing your adversary does now can undo it. The Hwasong-18. Inside the weapon that makes every defense system obsolete, the Hwasong-18 entered the global strategic conversation in April 2023 when North Korea conducted its first public test launch under the direct observation of Kim Jong-un. What that test revealed, and what Western analysts subsequently confirmed through telemetry analysis and trajectory reconstruction, was a weapon system that represented a genuine generational leap in North Korean ballistic missile capability, and by extension in the capability of any actor that came to possess it. Understanding why the Hwasong-18 is categorically different from every previous Iranian ballistic missile and why it renders Israel's existing defense architecture functionally obsolete against this specific threat requires examining 4 distinct technical dimensions: propulsion, range, guidance, and survivability. The propulsion system is where the Hwasong-18 story begins. Previous North Korean ICBMs, and by extension, the Iranian long-range ballistic systems derived from North Korean technology transfers, use liquid fuel propulsion. Liquid fuel systems are operationally significant in their capability, but they carry a critical tactical limitation. They require a fueling sequence before launch that takes hours and generates observable thermal and chemical signatures that intelligent satellites and ground-based sensors can detect. This launch preparation window is the vulnerability that American and Israeli preemptive strike doctrine has historically targeted. If you can detect the fueling sequence, you can strike the missile before it launches. The Hwasong-18 eliminates this vulnerability entirely. It uses a 3-stage solid fuel propulsion system, the most advanced solid fuel ICBM propulsion architecture that North Korea has ever produced. A solid fuel missile requires no fueling sequence. The propellant is already loaded and stored within the missile body. A road-mobile Hwasong-18 launcher can receive a launch order, erect its missile, and execute a launch within minutes, generating a thermal signature only in the seconds before ignition, far too brief for any preemptive response. This is not a marginal improvement in survivability. It is a categorical transformation. Against a liquid fuel system, preemptive strike remains a viable, if difficult and risky option. Against a solid fuel road mobile system dispersed across Iranian territory, preemptive strike is not a viable option. You cannot target what you cannot find with sufficient advance notice to strike before launch. The range dimension compounds the threat in ways that reshape the entire regional strategic map. The Hwasong-18's demonstrated range, confirmed at over 15,000 kilometers in its maximum trajectory test configuration, means that from launch positions anywhere within Iranian territory, the weapon can reach Tel Aviv, every American base in the Middle East, every European NATO capital, and with optimal positioning, targets within the continental United States. Iran has never previously possessed a delivery system with intercontinental reach. The acquisition of 500 Hwasong-18 platforms transforms Iran from a regional military power into a state with genuine global strike capability overnight. The guidance system represents the third dimension of the Hwasong-18's threat profile, and the dimension that most directly undermines existing missile defense architectures. North Korea's guidance technology has advanced substantially across the past decade, driven by access to Russian and Chinese technical expertise and by the kind of forced indigenous innovation that comprehensive sanctions pressure generates. The Hwasong-18 uses an inertial navigation system updated by stellar navigation, a guidance approach that is entirely independent of GPS or any other satellite navigation system that can be jammed or spoofed by American electronic warfare assets. This guidance independence means that American GPS jamming operations, which have been running continuously across the Middle East for extended periods and which have contributed to degrading the accuracy of some Iranian missile systems, have zero effect on Hwasong-18 terminal accuracy. The weapon navigates by stars. Stars cannot be jammed. Terminal accuracy for the Hwasong-18, based on North Korean test data analysis, is estimated at a circular error probable of approximately 100 to 150 meters for conventional warhead configurations, with substantially improved accuracy achievable through terminal guidance updates against hardened military targets. This accuracy, combined with an appropriate warhead yield, produces reliable destruction against city-scale targets. Against military targets, the accuracy is irrelevant. The weapon reaches its designated area regardless. The survivability architecture of the Hwasong-18 addresses the final dimension of the threat. The missile is equipped with a maneuvering re-entry vehicle, a warhead that can execute evasive maneuvers during terminal descent, drastically complicating intercept solutions for any missile defense system attempting to engage it. The Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, THAAD, which the United States has deployed in the region and which represents the highest tier intercept capability available against ballistic threats, was designed and optimized against non-maneuvering re-entry vehicles following predictable ballistic trajectories. Against a maneuvering re-entry vehicle executing lateral displacement maneuvers at hypersonic velocity in the terminal phase, THAAD's intercept probability degrades sharply. The Arrow 3 system, Israel's highest-tier ballistic missile defense platform, designed for exo-atmospheric intercept of long-range ballistic threats, faces the same fundamental challenge. Its intercept algorithms were developed against trajectory profiles that the Hwasong-18 maneuvering re-entry vehicle does not follow. Now multiply these technical characteristics by 500. 500 road mobile launchers dispersed across Iranian territory, each carrying a weapon that cannot be preemptively targeted, cannot be effectively jammed, and cannot be reliably intercepted by any defense system currently deployed in the region. This is not a threat that can be addressed through incremental improvements to existing defense architecture. It is a threat that requires a fundamental rethinking of every assumption that Israeli and American strategic planning has been built upon. The nuclear dimension, which Iranian officials have neither confirmed nor denied in their public statements regarding the transfer, adds a layer of uncertainty that is itself strategically significant. The Hwasong-18 was designed as a nuclear delivery vehicle. Its payload capacity and re-entry vehicle configuration are optimized for nuclear warhead delivery. Whether the transferred missiles carry nuclear warheads, carry conventional warheads, or were transferred as delivery platforms awaiting warhead mating, the ambiguity itself constitutes a deterrence effect. Any Israeli or American military planner who cannot be certain whether incoming Hwasong-18 missiles are carrying nuclear or conventional payloads must treat every launch as a potential nuclear strike and respond accordingly. Strategic ambiguity deliberately maintained is one of the most powerful instruments of deterrence available to a state actor. Iran has now acquired it at scale. Washington's paralysis when every option leads to catastrophe. The Emergency National Security Council session that convened within hours of transfer confirmation lasted 9 hours. What emerged from those 9 hours was not a decision. It was a documented assessment of why every available option carries consequences that no administration, regardless of political composition or stated commitment to Israeli security, can accept without triggering outcomes worse than the problem it is attempting to solve. Let us walk through the options matrix honestly, because the paralysis in Washington is not weakness. It is the rational response to a genuine strategic dilemma with no clean exit. Option 1. Military strike against Iranian ICBM facilities. The appeal of this option is intuitive. Iran has acquired a weapon system of unprecedented threat magnitude. Strike it before it can be used. Remove the capability through decisive military action. This is the logic that has driven American and Israeli preemptive strike doctrine for decades. The problem is the word facilities, plural and dispersed. 500 road mobile launchers are not concentrated in identifiable fixed facilities that can be targeted by a finite strike package. They are dispersed across Iranian territory at locations that change continuously. A strike campaign capable of achieving meaningful degradation of a 500-unit road mobile ICBM force would need to be massive in scale, hundreds of strike sorties over days or weeks, and would require targeting the entire Iranian military logistics and communications infrastructure simultaneously to prevent dispersal and relocation during the campaign. A strike campaign of that scale against Iran is not a precision military operation. It is a war against a nation with demonstrated capability to close the Strait of Hormuz, activate Hezbollah and Houthi networks simultaneously, strike American bases across the region with its existing missile arsenal, and now potentially respond with the very ICBM force being targeted. The estimated economic cost of a Strait of Hormuz closure to the global economy runs to several trillion dollars within the first 90 days. The estimated cost in American military casualties from simultaneous attacks against regional bases runs into the thousands. The estimated cost in Israeli civilian casualties from a full Iranian missile response runs into numbers that no government can publicly acknowledge without triggering domestic political collapse. Option 1 leads to a regional war whose cost exceeds every benefit achievable through military action. Option 2, covert action to degrade or destroy the transferred missiles through sabotage, cyber operations, or targeted elimination of the technical personnel required to operate them. This is a domain where Western intelligence agencies have historically been most effective against Iranian weapons programs. The Stuxnet cyber operation against Iranian centrifuges, the assassination campaigns against Iranian nuclear scientists, the covert sabotage of missile test programs. The problem is that covert action operates on a timeline measured in years, while the strategic threat posed by 500 already transferred and already dispersed ICBMs is immediate. Covert action might degrade the program over a multi-year horizon. It does not address the deterrence reality that exists today, this morning, in the current strategic environment. Option 3, diplomatic pressure combined with escalating sanctions to compel Iran to return or destroy the transferred missiles. This option fails at first contact with Iranian strategic logic. Iran did not acquire 500 Hwasong-18 ICBMs to return them under diplomatic pressure. The entire strategic purpose of the acquisition was to create a deterrence reality so overwhelming that military pressure against Iran becomes unacceptably costly. Asking Iran to give that capability back in exchange for sanctions relief is asking Iran to voluntarily return to strategic vulnerability. No Iranian government, regardless of its domestic political composition, can accept that trade. Option 4, accelerated deployment of advanced missile defense systems to the region, additional THAAD batteries, SM-3 interceptors aboard Aegis destroyers, potentially the deployment of classified next-generation intercept capabilities. This option is the most politically palatable in Washington because it appears to be doing something decisive without requiring a choice between war and acquiescence. The fundamental problem with option 4 is mathematics. 500 ICBMs. The United States currently has enough THAAD interceptors deployed globally to engage a fraction of a 500 missile salvo. Building additional interceptor capacity at the speed the situation demands would require years of production acceleration and cost tens of billions of dollars. And even a perfect intercept architecture, one that could theoretically engage every incoming missile, creates a cost asymmetry that favors Iran. Each THAAD interceptor costs approximately $10 million. Each Hwasong-18 produced at North Korean manufacturing efficiency and transferred at discounted strategic partnership pricing costs a fraction of that. Iran can sustain a salvo exchange indefinitely. America's interceptor stockpile cannot. Option 5, direct negotiation with Iran, trading security guarantees and sanctions relief for a commitment not to deploy the transferred missiles in offensive operations. This option is the one that no one in the official Washington policy space will acknowledge publicly, but that every serious strategic analyst recognizes as the only path that avoids catastrophe. Its problem is political. No American administration can walk into a negotiation with Iran and accept the premise that Iran has achieved a deterrence position that must be respected rather than reversed. The domestic political cost of that acknowledgement, the appearance of capitulation to a sanctioned adversary, is a cost that American political culture has not yet developed the framework to absorb. Washington's paralysis is therefore not a failure of competence. It is the product of a strategic situation in which every available option leads to outcomes that are either militarily catastrophic, strategically futile, or politically impossible. The administration is doing what administrations do when they face genuine strategic dilemmas with no good options. It is buying time, signaling resolve through visible military movements that carry no decisive operational intent, and hoping that the situation evolves in a direction that creates new options. Hope is not a strategy, but it is what Washington currently has. Israel's nightmare, the Samson option reconsidered. In the innermost sanctums of Israeli strategic planning, the classified spaces where doctrine is written and the unspoken is spoken, there has always existed a concept known as the Samson option. The idea, never officially acknowledged, is simple in its terrible logic. If Israel faces an existential threat that cannot be countered through conventional military means, it retains the option of nuclear retaliation against the sources of that threat. The name references the biblical figure who, facing certain death at the hands of his enemies, pulled down the pillars of the temple, destroying himself along with everyone around him. The Samson option has functioned for decades as the ultimate backstop of Israeli deterrence, the implicit guarantee that no combination of adversaries could eliminate Israel without facing nuclear annihilation in return. It has been a stabilizing force in the regional strategic environment, even if never explicitly stated. Last night's transfer confirmation has forced Israeli strategic planners to confront a question that the Samson option logic was never designed to address. What do you do when your adversary achieves a deterrence position that makes even the threat of nuclear retaliation insufficient to prevent existential pressure? Iran, with 500 Hwasong-18 ICBMs, potentially nuclear-armed, does not fear Israeli nuclear retaliation in the way that a conventionally armed Iran would fear it. If Iran can absorb an Israeli nuclear strike and still deliver a nuclear response against Israeli territory, the entire deterrence logic of the Samson option collapses. Mutual assured destruction does not deter a party that has already decided the cost of confrontation is acceptable. The Israeli strategic community is now grappling with a threat architecture that its entire doctrine was not built to address: a peer nuclear deterrence relationship with a regional adversary. Israel has spent its entire modern history as the region's sole nuclear power. The deterrence advantages of that monopoly are now under challenge in a way that has no historical precedent in Israeli strategic experience. The immediate operational response has been the activation of the highest alert levels across every Israeli military branch. Simultaneously, Arrow 3 batteries have been placed on continuous engagement-ready status. THAAD systems provided by the United States have been repositioned to optimize coverage against trajectory profiles consistent with Iranian ICBM launches. Underground command facilities have been fully activated with continuous staffing. The nuclear submarine force, Israel's second strike capability, and the ultimate guarantor of the Samson option, has been dispersed to patrol positions across the Mediterranean and Red Sea. These measures represent maximum operational readiness. They do not represent a solution.